Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another disclosure in the media. I'm here with Ryan Pollenkarts again, and we are looking more into the Elder Scrolls lore. This lore character, I believe, is Reman Cyrodiil. So go ahead, Ryan.
All right, so Raymond Cyrodiil, or Raymond Cyrid, as he would have named himself, because Cyrid is just like the alien word for Cyrodiil, like the name of that landmass. And of course, we will get into pictures. I'll show you a little bit here. So Cyrodiil is the central most province. We've talked about Cyrodiil when we did Oblivion. We've talked about Cyrodiil in the ESO show. We've talked about Cyrodiil a lot because it's also the seat of most of the major empires throughout Tamrielic history. And Raymond Cyrodiil is the founder of the Second Empire of Men. Well, the Second Imperial Empire of Men. Technically, I think it's like the Third or Fourth Empire of Men, if you want to go like truthfully. But he was... So his origin story is sort of, we don't know if it was made after the fact to legitimize his rule or if it actually happened. Elven proponents seem to say that like it's fake, but most humans believe like it's real, and that's not, that doesn't really tell us much about the actual truth of it, because that's kind of just the divisions between peoples in this world. So I'm going to go through the origin story assuming that it's both mythological and true, and I'm going to explain which parts I think are mythological and which parts are real. So Raymond Cyrodiil's origin is basically, so there was this king of the Colovian Highlands. So during this period, let me see if I can't find the proper picture for it. So during this period, this is Cyrodiil still. The red part is known as Colovia. The bluish part is known as Nibene. Basically, Nibene is everything close to this river. Colovia is these highlands in the west and in the north, for the most part. Now, King Hrol was king of Colovia, or at least the king of the Colovian estate, which is more like... the closest thing to it historically would be something like the Holy Roman Empire, where there was multiple little states all underneath one leader. And then Nibene was just, and these regions had not been unified since the fall of the First Empire at this point, 2,400 years prior to this. Well, no, not 24, like 2,000 years prior to this was the last time these were like unified as one state under St. Alessia's First Empire. So King Hrol has a vision, and this vision is of blood-drinking snake, like serpent men, invading Tamriel and putting it to the sword. So this king gets together a group of knights, and they're riding around trying to shore up defenses in Cyrodiil. Well, basically, they see a spirit form of Saint Alessia herself. And Saint Alessia's spirit initially runs from them because some of the knights are not pure of heart. So they all break off to try to find her, and Hrol finds her at this hilltop called Sancretor. Now, Queen Alessia's spirit, he professes his love for her and her tenets and the religion she started, and she basically explains that she's all of Cyrodiil now, like she's merged with the land of Cyrodiil, and that she is willing to take him as a lover. So it's implied that he screws like a hole in a hill and then dies as a result of it. And then out of the ground, baby Reman is born. And basically the baby's cries call a shepherdess up to Sancretor, which is this place. And well, this is a later, like the fort that was built there afterward, that is like the tomb of emperors. But at this point, it was just a hill. And this shepherdess climbs up the hill and finds baby Reman with the amulet of kings already like on him. Like it's actually like on his forehead. And it's not embedded like into his forehead, but it's on him. That's already a sign that he's a dragonborn, because only people with dragon's blood can use the amulet of king, can like wear it. So basically, this shepherdess and the knights of King Hrol beeline for the imperial city, so Sancretor is like up here, sort of, if you look for the bee at Bruma, it's to the left of it. They beeline down to the Imperial City and put him on the Ruby Throne. So the central throne in the middle of the White Gold Tower. Uncontested, because he's got the Amulet of Kings. So no one has a claim more strong than him.
Mm-hmm.
Infant Emperor is now, well, king, because he's really right now only the king of Colovia. So this the western portion of Cyrodiil. The eastern portion knows that there's a Dragonborn Emperor on the throne, but can't really do anything about it because still the states are about evenly matched. And the only difference between that original map that I showed you is that this island would now be red.
Okay.
So over the years, Reman grows up, and by all accounts, is just a well-informed leader. He also has this innate knowledge of this invasion that's coming, and sends money up to Skyrim and sends money around Tamriel to upgrade forts. And he doesn't really say why he's doing it, but so most of the forts you see in Skyrim were built either by Reman before he was emperor or during the Reman Empire originally. So the invasion comes, and it's these folks. These folks are known as the Saesi, and they are a race from the continent of Akavir. So if we're looking at this map, Akavir is over that Padomaic Ocean. It's another continent. In fact, let's see if I can't just find.
That reminds me of they remind me of Untumban or Japanese Oriental type of warriors. Also, while you're finding that, when you're talking about Saint Alessia becoming one with the land, I've heard of different beings when they get to a certain evolutionary stage, they can choose to link themselves to areas of land and become almost like a naiadic type of consciousness for land, or in reverse, sometimes you have elementals that'll form from different concepts like earth, air, fire, water, metals, different energetic concepts, and different plant life concepts, and combinations of all the different elements, maybe two, maybe three, maybe all four, and they become their own separate life form from those land concepts. So you have the reverse of that too. So that's interesting that showed that Alessia became one with the hill, because I've heard of beings doing that. Some will mimic that too. Some will be underground in a cairn or in a tomb somewhere, say, "Oh, I'm the spirit of this land," but they're really just BSing people that way too, and they've done that in history. So I've seen all three of it.
Okay, that makes a decent amount of sense here. So this is Akavir. Ignore Eldmaris and Mora. Ignore anything that's not just right here. And these serpent men, and the lore's kind of iffiest if they act. There were some that were actually serpent people, and some that were just normal people and with reptilian features. Not Argonian level reptilian, but maybe just scales kind of right here and stuff. Mm-hmm. But they were basically in charge of this westernmost area of Akavir. There's other races on Akavir. We're not going to get too much into Akavir this episode because they're not really involved in this. It's basically just these Taesi, and they have a group called the Dragon Guard. Now, the Dragon Guard of the Taesi is basically the predecessor group that would lead later on to the Blades, and they basically vowed to exterminate dragons. And something that I've never really spoken about is there's a theory that when dragons first came into existence on Nirn, it was in Akavir, and that Alduin, because they could fly, they crossed all the world basically that they cared, that they wanted, and took it all. Now, so the Tiesi had been fighting a war against the dragons, and it's believed that a lot of these dragons, when they started losing this war, flew over towards Cyrodiil. Not towards Cyrodiil, towards Tamriel proper, and to get away from it. And the Tiesi decided to invade Tamriel to destroy the rest of these dragons. Alternatively, the Dragon Guard sect of the Tiesi culture is also looking for a Dragonborn because they revere the Dragonborn as their spiritual and just governmental leader. So they're on the way to find a Dragonborn and to kill dragons. So they initially land somewhere in Morrowind. not positive where. It just says they landed in Morrowind. And I'm guessing it's somewhere near this region, though, because the first time we actually hear of their deeds during the war, it's that they're fighting the Jarls in Skyrim and are finding decent success, and that they set up a forward base of operations to then invade Cyrodiil in the Jarl Mountains at the Pale Pass, which is the most major central route between basically Helgen and Bruma. In fact, it's like right here where my mouse cursor is. And they hole up in the Pale Pass Fort. So in the Pale Pass Fort, they have made this central base, and they're consolidating their power. At the same time, Reman has unified Colovia, the Colovian Highlands, and Nibene in an unheard of alliance to then hold back this Akaviri invasion. And it's around this time that some Nibenean librarians find a very early version of the Songs of Pelennor, the story that talks about Pelennor Whitestrike and his deeds. And the only reason we're coming back to Pelennor is there is that whole thing where when he kills that, where he goes into battle against, it's an elven name. It's one of the Iliad lords. It's like Haramil of Copper and Tea. And when he challenges them to single combat, he kills them at Sancretor, where baby Reman was supposed to be born from the earth. And is while he's eating the neck veins of this king, he's screaming glory to Reman. And this is found in an Ebenean library, and that's why they give him his support, basically. So now Reman leads this united Imperial Legion up to Pale Pass and is basically demanding that the Saessi do not enter Cyrodiil. And this is the strongest all of Cyrodiil has been in 2 millennia, basically. And so, but the Saessi are not phased by this at all. They've swept through Skyrim and taken fairly minimal casualties. It's implied that they've done way better than they were expected to in Skyrim. But at the same time, Vivek, the man god of Morrowind, we've talked about the Tribunal. Vivek is one of them, the warrior poet of the Tribunal, gets an alliance between the dregs. We talked about them in like the monsters episode. They're like those aquatic crustacean-like beings. Allies the dregs with the Dunmer, like the Dunmer noble houses, and they attack the Akaviri in the rear and cut them off from any more reinforcements or supplies from Akavir. At the same time, the Nords rally under the Jarls and are pushing, and basically the Saessi get pushed all the way back to the Falkreath hold in Skyrim. So this area down here. So at this point, they're cut off and they're running low on supplies, the Akaviri invaders. And we've got Reman and his army basically here. And we've got a Nordic Dreg and Dunmer alliance kind of holding them back here. At the same time, the Reachmen are sort of ravaging the lands here. So the Saessi are not going to deal with the Reachmen because they don't really see a point. And at the same time, Hammerfell is doing its own stuff, so they're not getting any further this way. They have to come down into Cyrodiil to survive. And what happens is a battle is fought at the Pale Pass. And as Reman is leading his troops into battle, he uses a Thu'um. Now, the lords of the Dragon Guard see that now, understand what he is, and kneel before him, apologize for entering his lands, offer like their service and their army's entire service, because they're the lords of the Saessi themselves. So they basically are like, no, we are now loyal to you. We've been looking for you. We're here to kill dragons, essentially. And Reman takes this opportunity to found the Second Empire. The hunting dragons bit, we don't really know what happens too well with that, where that goes. We do know that the Dragon Guard themselves will help found this second empire. So this is the second empire's banner, and it is just the red diamond. It's meant to represent the Amulet of Kings. And this would be the final territorial level that the Second Empire got to. They never went into Morrowind because the Tribunal would have stomped them, pretty much. And Argonia is suicide to invade at all for anyone. And Somerset kind of doesn't want to be part of it. It's under the control of the First Aldmeri Dominion at this point. Excuse me. And a lot of this red, especially in Elsver, Valenwood, and Hammerfell, that red is client states. So they're kings and lords or shahs, or I guess you could say leadership is nominally loyal to Reman's empire, not actively part of the empire. They're still independent states, but they're basically relying on the empire's will to keep them around. In High Rock joins, Skyrim joins because Skyrim owes its allegiance to Dragonborns. High Rock joins because it's too broken up at this point to put up any kind of resistance against this new force. The Khajiit join mostly due to the trade opportunities that this new empire creates for them. And again, there's still a lot of client kingdoms, especially in the south. Valenwood joins, I'm not exactly sure why, and I think this is probably one of the weakest held areas for this empire because Valenwood is a giant jungle, and if these groups wanted to break away, they could. So the Dragon Guard basically reforms into what we now know as the Blades. They become the Emperor's personal bodyguards, and they wear traditional Akaviri style gear for the most part, and unless they're on undercover missions, which there was a lot of undercover Blades agents throughout history. But in battle regalia, they would be wearing this samurai looking armor of the Sayasi, basically that East Asian look. In fact, in Oblivion, when you get the katana, it says Akaviri katana, not
Yeah, essentially they've merged Nordic and Untumban together. That looks like a merge between Asgardian look and Untumban look. That because in ancient galactic history, those two traded a lot with each other. So what I find very interesting though is, as you were describing Reman, as people were bowing to him, I saw this one thing in my head. It just hit real quickly. Whereas I was seeing this guy in full regalia armor had the symbol, it was the Second Empire, on it, and I saw that diamond symbol in red, in that scenario, and I was kneeling to this person, and I had my head cut off. I thought it was really interesting. What I was actually seeing was not necessarily an echo of the writing where people put energy towards it, because you can create something, when you create a whole world like this, you can create an energetic presence of it. It's not that. What I'm seeing is what Isaac was just telling me was I was seeing an actual event that took place on the planet that Tamriel and all them and Nirn are based off of. And where I was seeing another lifetime where the event of Reman forming the Second Empire is an actual event. And I was just seeing this guy in with the red diamond symbol. And what's interesting is my soul self, Toran Kal, on his helmet, he has this red jewel that sits on the front of it a lot. And I was asking Moses what that was, and I found it was a protection symbol or a magical symbol. But I'm seeing a red version of that, like that you see with Reman, and also Colonel White Strike with the special knight armor. And what I was seeing was that planet where I must have had a past life presence there, where that was an actual battle where that empire was formed, and those exact borders and boundaries were formed. What you were just saying, some didn't want to join, like Somerset, and some you couldn't invade because the empire would have been creamed, like in Argonia and Marlin. So I'm seeing something, a very similar setup, and I'm getting a major validation that you just read a piece of galactic history that took place on that planet. So I just happened to see this real quick blip of like getting my head cut off by this guy in the white armor and the red diamond symbol. So that's an actual legitimate, Isaac. What is that? Is that an actual legitimate symbol of an empire that existed there, identically? What about Tarankel's red jewel? Did it have anything to do with that, or like the amulet of kings, for instance? Because when you were talking about the amulet of kings being on his head, I was thinking of the red jewel on Tarankel's helmet, or something similar. Because I keep seeing somebody with a glowing red jewel on a helmet that was being recognized like the amulet of kings, and the amulet of kings is supposed to be a dimensional type object. So that is basically has its foot in two worlds. So, and different stones like amethyst, for instance, has its foot in two worlds. Rubies and corundum have their foot in two worlds. So I'm basically seeing this correlation there. I just said I'm getting this huge validation to that, where I'm connecting to a bit of actual history. And also, when you're going into the formation of the blades, they're essentially the Secret Service to the Emperor, but them as dragon hunters or dragon slayers. This actually makes sense because I've seen Untombed warriors and also as Guardian Viking type warriors and elemental mixes go after reptilians and start chopping heads off. Like they'll just go lay waste to Draco and corrupt dragons and stuff like that. So that's an actual bit of also an ancient galactic / Earth history as well.
All right, and so where were we? Okay, I know where I am now. So this would be Reman himself around this point. He's wearing the Amulet of Kings. In fact, a lot of armors for emperors seem to have like this cutout for the Amulet of Kings, is like Chimel Adabal, like the actual red diamond, to like pop out of it. And it's never like, and we don't know if it's actually underneath the armor or like over the armor. So, and it's one of those cool things though, that like the Amulet of Kings can't be cut off of an emperor. Like you could try to like catch it with a knife, like the cord, and it won't break. So that's probably what it is. It's probably over the armor, but we don't know for sure. But yeah, this isn't actually one of the devs for like the old lore for the Elder Scrolls. This is their drawing of Reman, so that's why I used this one.
Yeah, and I think the character I was seeing was very similar to Reman Cyrodiil, very very similar, and utilizing the Amulet of Kings. And I think that the Amulet of Kings in that instance, or that whatever that device was essentially the same way, or that enchanted object was the same way, where you couldn't cut it off the person. It looked like a necklace the same as well, or it could be turned into a crown or a headpiece. So from what I could see.
So the new Dragon Guard blades set up multiple like temple stronghold areas all over Tamriel. They set up Cloud Ruler Temple and Skyhaven Temple for sure. There's probably other ones all over the place that we don't know about, or that have fallen in disrepair by the point of this, by the points of Skyrim, and by the time you can even get to them in games. But at Skyhaven Temple, in what is basically this part of this island is where it is in Skyrim, like in between Markarth, Karthwasten, and Rorkstead. That's where it is. They built this door, and it actually takes a dragon, somebody with dragon's blood in their blood, basically, to open the door by cutting like themselves and doing like a blood like seal. It's like a blood seal thing. And then this door is actually a depiction of Reman's head, and it's one of the only depictions of Reman in games at all. And basically what happens is like this, it's like a magical seal, and then when the blood touches it, the head like folds up and out of the way, and you can enter the temple. Beyond that, so then this temple is more important for a little bit later in the story, but around the same time, Reman is consolidating his hold, setting up the Dragon Guard, and just beginning to rule an empire. Now he's an emperor, not just like a regional king. Now he's an emperor of majority of Tamriel. Like his state is not small by any stretch of the word. So Reman lives until, I have the date in here. So yeah, he was emperor from his birth basically to the first era year 2762. I believe he was born in 2702. So it's like 60, 70 years of ruling. I know that's for sure. Actually, I think it's 260, like 92 or something. But he basically rules for somewhere in between 60 or 70 years. And it's implied that he's killed by an assassin while he's praying. And we don't know if it was an assassin for sure, but like all the sources seem to say it was an assassin of the Morag Tong Guild, which is a regional assassins guild for the most part out of Morrowind, though they do have agents all over the place. And they have their own crazy history. And maybe when we talk about like the actual parts of Morrowind more in depth, we'll talk about them. But basically, they're state-sanctioned assassins in Morrowind, but everywhere else that's still legal. So Reman is then succeeded by his son Kostav. And I'm going to use this picture to be Kostav. And Kostav, Reman seemed to be a bit more of like a lenient emperor. Kostav was not. So Kostav, one of his first major things was he ordered the Blades / Dragon Guard, whose numbers, they weren't small by any chance, but he wanted to expand them. So he ordered forced conscriptions in Skyrim, which then led to like a full-on revolt. And as a result, his brother, Reman II, would have him deposed. He was deposed, lived for, I think, like 6 or 7 years in exile. He was still sacrosanct, so that means he can't be touched, like legally. If you attacked him, you'd be condemned by the gods, basically. So he was still considered sacrosanct, so he went and lived in like the edge of Cyrodiil and Black Marsh, somewhere around here. Because his tomb is somewhere near Murkwater. In Murkmire, it's called. And he rules for... He doesn't rule long. He only rules for like 2 years before he's deposed by his younger brother, Reman II. And Reman II, we're going to use this statue. It's a statue of Reman, which it could have been any of the Remans. It's probably Reman Cyrodiil, but we'll use this for Reman II, basically. And Reman II, he allows the Akaviri Dragon Guard, he ends the revolt in Skyrim, the Winterhold Revolt. They rejoin the Empire fully. He cuts back on the forced conscriptions. It becomes a volunteer force of the best warriors from the Legion at that point for people who could become Blades. He then allows the Blades at Skyhaven Temple to build Alduin's Wall, the wall that tells the prophecy of the Dragonborn coming at the fourth era to defeat Alduin. Mm-hmm. And the worst thing Reman II does is he starts a war with Morrowind, which was like his grandfather. Well, his father wouldn't do that, but he does it. And this war lasts. So he's killed by Morag Tong assassins, Reman II. His son becomes emperor. His son continues the war, but doesn't really do well and dies relatively quickly. And then Reman III, who is Reman II's grandson, so the great grandson of Reman I, continued the war. Morag Tong assassins kill him. And most likely, though, these Morag Tong assassins weren't sent by anybody in Morrowind. They were most likely sent by Versa Duché, which was one of the one of the Sayesi, who was in the Dragon Guard, who was very high up in the Dragon Guard, basically second in command to the Emperor. And he creates the Akaviri Potentate after the fact, because Reman III had no heirs. So the Akaviri Potentate, or he did have an heir, and I think he was also assassinated, the same table. But so Versa Duché, this is a very long-lived race, this race that they Sayasi warriors. So he takes over and makes the Akaviri Potentate, which is basically this is the armor in ESO for the Akaviri Potentate, but they make this state still the Second Empire, just no emperor. He keeps the name potentate for like official reasons because he doesn't have dragon's blood. He doesn't want a revolt on his hands. So he leads the Akaviri potentate. Basically, the only major thing he did during his reign is end the war with Morrowind and charter, like give the okay from the imperial government to the charter of the Mages Guild and the Fighters Guild. That's why in ESO, it's very early on in the Mages Guild and Fighters Guild life. They've only been around for like 250 years at this point. That's why they still have very Akaviri looking armors, because Versa Duche's brother or kinsman, it says, was one of the ones that wanted the starting of the Founders Guild. So a lot of the Akaviri blooded people, or the Akaviri themselves that took part in this invasion, joined the Fighters Guild if they weren't already parts of the Blades, or a lot of them that were part of the Blades that wanted were being sent undercover all over the world would join the Fighters Guild as a way to have that cover. And this is the Fighters Guild armor in ESO. So you can see that same East Asian look that you get from the Akaviri. So Versa Duche, he reigns for like 325 years. And it's implied that he's already about 100 when he takes the throne. So yeah, he's old. He charges the Mages Guild and the Fighters Guild, and then he was succeeded by his son Severian Chorak, whose entire line was slain in one night about 60 years after he takes the throne in Second Era 430. So when Versa Duche had the Reman III killed and the Reman line itself ended, that's when the First Era ended and Second Era began. And Versa Duche's line ends with Severin Chorak, and they were all slain on this one night, and this event ends the Second Empire. The power vacuum created leads to the interregnum period, which is the period that you play in during ESO and interregnum is actually a word in our language that just means a period between two empires. Mm-hmm. And with this period coming to a head, various factions, and during the entire potentate period, parts of the empire were breaking off already because it wasn't strong enough anymore to hold all that territory. So parts of Skyrim have already broken away. Morrowind was never part of it. Argonia was never part of it. It's implied that most of the client kings stopped paying lip service to the empire at that point. So Valenwood and Elsewhere likely broke most of the part away. It's probably very similar to the empire's constraints during the events of Skyrim, except for the fact that I'm guessing regional powers in High Rock were already not listening to the Emperor. And Hammerfell was almost likely not even a player anymore. But so the potentate falls and the interregnum begins. And with that, basically, Reman's empire is done. However, Reman was also remembered, even during his life, he was being worshipped as a god. Because he was a dragonborn and the feats he accomplished as a dragonborn, he was already being called a god, the ninth divine at that point of the imperial pantheon. And so Reman in the imperial pantheon would just stay Reman. And basically he was a patron god of like warriors doing the just thing. A lot of the things that would later become attributed to Talos were Reman's godhood there.
Okay.
In Hammerfell, he took on another position. Basically, he was then in Hammerfell, he was merged with a Yakutan god. The Red Guards came over from a continent called Yakuta, and they had their own pantheon and stuff prior to any of their involvement in Tamriel. This is long history before that, but he gets merged with one of them and gets known as Raymond Ebenarm, or Reman Ebenarm. And Ebenarm is basically a war god, a warrior god, and a god that hates all Daedra and undead. The only Daedra that he doesn't hate is Sheogorath because he sees and that's never really brought up as to why, but the only one that he doesn't like have hatred towards is Sheogorath. He was also referred to as the worldly god by a lot of different groups because he was somebody that was actually known to be having lived on the planet at one point. And one of the cool parts about Ebenarm is Ebenarm has been seen, like Ebenarm has actually changed Tamriel in the past, like physically. So there's stories about in Hammerfell, especially, as well as in Southern High Rock. There are stories of armies would come to meet to battle, and Ebenarm would appear between their battle lines. Like as they're closing in on each other, Ebenarm's like visage would appear and would basically create a situation where with two-sided victories, where both sides were content with what happened. Okay. Also, Ebenarm has lesser forms that he basically sends out. Most divines have done this in Elder Scrolls, but not as well known as Ebenarm's. Even though you never learn that this is Ebenarm distinctly doing this, it's almost certainly Ebenarm doing this. So in Skyrim, when you reach level 81, which to get to level 81 in Skyrim, you have to max out everything. You have to have 100 in every skill tree. If you have the Dragonborn DLC, a man named the Ebony Warrior, who's like absurdly tall, and like there's a character called Sun that you'll meet inside like the main quest line, who's like, it's like the highest, like biggest size like a mortal character profile can be. Ebenarm and him are the only two characters in the game that can be that tall. Mm-hmm. And the Ebony Warrior and him. And he's got like overpowered gear, and it's basically implied that this is an aspect of Ebenarm that wants to test the Dragonborn, because there is no other greater warrior on the face of Tamriel at this point. And when you meet the Ebony Warrior, he's like, I have nothing left. No other challenges to beat. You're all that's left. All the quests I've done, all the rewards I've gained, you are the only thing left that can challenge me. And that's basically, like, for all intents and purposes, without mods, that is kind of like the final challenge of your character at Skyrim.
That's very interesting that has come up, especially with the height thing. Like, the size difference between both of those characters you mentioned are of a size differential between some of the proto-Viking types, not the giants. The giants were like 50, 60 feet up, but this is the stage down from that or a couple stages down from that where they were slightly taller like that. And also with the Ebony Warrior here, he's like a fusion of two beings. I have seen this constantly, especially over the past year or so. I've seen fusions of different beings where, whether it's demonic or otherwise, where sometimes a ghost will fuse with a demon form, like a mimic or a ghoul, a wendigo or something like that, and they form a totally new life form that takes a totally new set of like spells or incantations or protection objects or something to get rid of. And you have to instead of doing it that way and actually fighting the alchemy of the two, you have to bifurcate the two of them and send the ghost on and get rid of the demon life form. In this instance, it's really interesting that the Ebony Warrior is fusion of Reman and this other being, where I'm sensing the other being is something very similar, like how we have, what am I picking up on? Have gods of the old world that have been almost forgotten, like from a prehistory time frame. And then you have people that came later that are actually quantumly linking or entangling to things that came earlier. Possibly their soul had a link to it, or they are seeing some kind of soul familial type bond, or some kind of affinity towards it. And I'm trying to think what I'm trying to say here. Yeah, this is very interesting. I never managed to get to level 81, but also if you do the numerology, 81 is 9, and you have like essentially they're trying to say that 81 is also is essentially like Talos, the ninth deity, or the ninth of the 9. Essentially, they say the 8th, but is actually 9. So I'm thinking that's why they went 81, and they were saying 9. But
maybe, maybe that's a very good point. I never even thought about that.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's what they were saying was you're the ninth, which means Talos, also Dragonborn, all that. So I'm thinking that's what they were getting at with 8-1. But yeah, I find that very, very, very interesting. I've never actually gotten that far. I don't play Skyrim as much. All I can do is play the vanilla Skyrim. I haven't been able to do mods on Xbox One as much. But I find that very, very interesting that has come up with the fusion of life forms, also the height that they've seen. Show the characters that are of like the stage before, kind of like the head of the not the head of the the head of the companions. When you find him in the afterlife, he's much taller as well, and so several of the others are slightly taller than you as well, varying heights above you. And I find that very interesting because with the giants, when they had to downsize, some of their groups had to downsize as food and resources became scarcer over periods of time. And eventually, we're the offshoot. Some of us are an offshoot as a result. Even aside from the Orion tampering that took place, and during the Orion Wars, that aside, we've had a race that's been much more prevalent on this planet than what history is saying. Billions and billions of years. These giants were humans as well, like Tarankala and Krum and all of them. But there was also another point earlier on you made with the blood seal. Isaac was reminding me to talk about that, where these are dangerous rituals with blood. This is why I'm very, very careful when I'm making my pieces, not to get cut or anything like that. Which I've done. I've had to throw pieces out that I've worked on because of blood getting mixed into it, hair, all this other stuff. Because hair has its own set of rituals too. If you do like burning with it, or you get it mixed into something that, well, the hair tends to create a weird entanglement antenna to your body, kind of like a Samson thing where he got his hair cut off and his strength went away, sort of thing. Hair is considered more of an antennae, which that's not completely true because you can go bald and still have the open crown. That's where some Tibetan monks use that technique as well. But with the blood seal, it is essentially no different than you doing a fingerprint where it's your DNA seal, or your eye retina, uh, where you can open a lock, or using the thumbprint as scanning the thumbprint on a computer. But in the magical sense, blood seals can go horribly wrong to our blood rituals, where you can conjure some kind of weird duplicate consciousness of yourself, or this goes into more the vampiric type of rituals, whereas blood seals will unlock, or blood rituals will unlock. What am I getting at? Aspects of what's known as the vampiric virus. I won't go completely into that in this episode. Whereas you awaken old versions of like the viral contagions in the past. Like if your blood happens to have a certain lineage that happened to go along with the creation of a particular strain of that virus, or if your blood happens to have a particular lineage that touched a particular spot at a particular time, and you happen to be that past life, and that particular ancestor, you can open up a seal, open up even a piece of technology that's on a site that would open a doorway to a hidden cavern, hidden cave, laboratory, what have you. There was something also in the show Stargate, SG-1 and Atlantis, that came out years ago, whereas they had something called the ancient gene, where they could use it to activate some of the ancient equipment. It's very similar in that respect. Like they even picked up Arthur's sword at one point because it was key to a particular genetic. Excalibur was a piece of technology that was key to a particular set of genetics that would activate a hologram that would challenge you to basically a duel, see if you were worthy to keep the technology, or handle the technology or not. If you couldn't defeat the hologram, you couldn't keep it. And this seems to be reminiscent of when you're being led into Shore's Hall and Sovereign Guard, and also up against the Ebony Knight as well. So I know that was long-winded, but that was the essence of the download that I was getting surrounding that entire concept. I know that was hard to follow, but that I've been picking up some things as we've been going along about some of these aspects of this history, and I feel these events that were being said, including what I said before, were part of that other world that Isaac likes to talk about. That's like Naren. So this is the download I was getting from this. I know that was long-winded, but that's how it came through.
The only other information I have is kind of Ebonarm's like mosques in Hammerfell are actually very interesting because necromancers lose their ability to do magic in them. Vampires turn to dust, and Daedra gets sent back to oblivion when they enter them.
That's actually very interesting. Yeah.
He also becomes patron god of the Fighters Guild all over. And after the White Gold Concordant, you would have thought that the elves, because he was once a human, would have went after him to try to get his worship band. In Cyrodiil, they did try to get his worship band, but that was able to be removed from the White Gold Concordant. Just like the whole Saint Martin thing, like Martin Septim, like the people are still allowed to view him as like a saint. The elves aren't happy about it, but they're allowed to. And in Hammerfell, he's still worshipped as like the main warrior god. So that's cool. I think, so Sai Sahan, the sword singer in like the team of the companions that you are in, he does make reference to like glory, something like glory to Ebonarm or something like that. He does make a reference to Ebonarm at some point. I just don't remember exactly.
Yeah, the temple you were talking about, where vampires turn to dust and Daedra sent back to oblivion and everything. There are seals like that, that's magical spells you can put on buildings and doors that will do exactly like that. Like if you had a physical vampire enter, it would literally turn it to dust because vampires have no souls. It would be essentially the energetics or the frequency burning the vampire. And if anything doesn't belong here, like if they have a different quantum signature or a signature of another realm, like how Oblivion is, it would automatically portal them back. You can tool buildings to do things of that nature. It takes a high amount of magical skill and rune type protection type magic, like what you'd see in the Marvel comics or Marvel Cinematic Universe, like with the Scarlet Witch, where she used protective runes and Wiccan runes and stuff like that, and witchcraft. It's essentially the same, where you can outfit a building to literally become the snare. Like if these beings think they can wander in there, they literally get sent exactly back to their frequency point of origin. Whereas they are humming at this frequency, they've entered into a higher one or faster moving one, they're automatically driven back to their original frequency point of origin or die. That's essentially it. So that's actually an accuracy to as far as magic goes.
And then the only other thing I have is this somewhat funny little post that I found. Don't know if it's hearsay or not, but somebody made it. It's funny, and I thought I had to include it. And that is that Sanguine once served in the court of Emperor Reman Cyrodiil, where he would be known to throw bohemic parties that would even go to teach the emperor himself how to. In one such episode, Leowyn was closed for the purpose of hosting a week-long orgy, compromising hundreds of the most prominent nobles in Cyrodiil. For more information, look up Funky Town.
That's actually very interesting because those are bohemic parties. There's also the satanic parties, which is Bohemian Grove. That's the dark side of this. But then you have the way Sanguine is in the series is actually kind of funny. Like in Oblivion, he wants you to basically get the uptight royals to lighten up in a quest, and you go in and use this spell on them, and it like takes all their clothes off essentially, and they come after you. And in Skyrim, you meet up with him, and he just wants you to lighten up by basically challenging him to a drinking contest, and he's disguised as a human in that.
And then it's like the hangover, and then the rest of the quest is just the hangover, basically.
The rest of the quest is the hangover. So you can see he's more of a god to try to get people to loosen up, lighten up, kind of like Isaac. So he always tells me, the way he tells all his lewd jokes and everything, he was trying to get me to lighten up over the years. It's very, very similar, but on the flip side, you have the dark satanic type of Bohemian Grove type stuff. But this is more touching on the loosening up side. So you have the yin and the yang here, where you have the sexual orgy circle stuff on the negative side, and then you have the positive trying to get people to lighten up and not be so uptight. So it's you have that. And I saw this in the Witcher game as well, where you come across this ghost that is more open than Geralt is. He's slightly more uptight, and the ghost is more open, and it's starting to get him to change a little bit as he's interacting and being possessed by this ghost. So I find that very, very interesting. This is funny in its own right. I think it's hilarious, but the hangover quest that you have in Skyrim's funny. but then you meet up with Sanguine. But I actually find this hilarious because you also have the yin and the yang going on here. The negative stuff aside, the positive stuff funny.
And actually, what would be interesting about this, if it's true, is that Sanguine is then not being held beyond the tenets of like the whole white gold, like Amulet of Kings thing. Like normally, Daedra, when there's a Dragonborn Emperor who has the dragon fires lit and has the Amulet of Kings, the gates of Oblivion are just shut by the divines. Mm-hmm. So Daedra shouldn't be able to get in. Maybe a Daedric Prince is a different situation altogether. Mm-hmm. But if that's true, yeah, Sanguine broke through somehow. And also, the only Daedric princes that have ever been shown to be able to enter Nirn in like a mortal, like sized body and stuff and interact with people without being noticed that who they are is exactly who they are Sanguine and Sheogorath, two Daedric princes that are considered not really to be the most powerful ones. The other ones come in like these giant, massive, like demon god totem crazy monster thing, and generally when they come in it takes the active divines or entities that are basically divines to stop them, and but him and Sheogorath seem to be able to just show up whenever they want.
That's interesting how they can kind of slip through because they're smaller and not really paid attention to. That's how some people see humans as far as galactic rules go. We can slip through and kind of break some of these rules, while some of the galactics out there, some of the large ones or the giants and stuff, are adhered to certain rules. And it's like that. It was like also in the end of Oblivion, where you had Dagon coming through in his giant form, and it took Akatosh to come in to stop him. It's essentially, that's how the galactic rules would work. That's how the Mozen have worked with some of the darker Cassiopeians as well, which I found out not all of them were dark too. I came across one by the name of Malim, who was actually decent. So they're not all evil. Though the point I'm making is when that group started to do things on Earth and started to cultivate and give the Nazis capabilities and stuff like that, along with the Draco and Orions, the Mozen came in and balanced the scales by helping the United States and Great Britain in World War II. And with World War I found out there was a lot of vampiric stuff involved in, a lot of dark magic, conjuring what would be like Daedra, then dark satanic magic, vampiric magic, stuff like that some of these groups were involved in. So you have a lot of these things that were being brought from off-world, on-world, like the vampiric virus that's hundreds of thousands of years old. And you have all these other rituals, magic rituals that humans had either forgotten or were unprepared for. And a lot of these different wars that go on in the background. The Mozen were kind of like the balance there, where they had to step in to be the counterbalance to what some of these Darshinian or dark wizards were doing. And even at other points in history, the giants, like Krum's group, and all of them had to step in to be that counterbalance. So yeah, you have, when certain things get to a certain pinnacle, like the Galactics had told me, if there was like an imminent like destruction of Earth or an imminent extinction event or something like that, they would step in to become that counterbalance to stop it. But beyond that, they're not. Some of them aren't even allowed to completely interfere. This also goes with a conversation I had with somebody not too long ago, where you had the ancients in Stargate that won't let even any of their people at all interfere with humans, even to the point of death. There's like an absurdity to a certain non-interference directive as well, where people, some of the ones that want to resist them, have to hide and do things in secret. Like the character of Merlin that was in that, and Morgana and them had to do things in secret, away from prying eyes of the rest of the ancient groups that were out there, the galactic groups. It's very similar to that, but going back on point, yeah, it would take like an act of divines. Yeah, there would be a clash that people would be able to visibly see, like they did back in the run of the Renaissance period, where you see that famous painting where you see all the warring of the galactics in the sky, where you see all these UFOs. That was an incident where something similar was happening. Somebody was directly interfering, and then somebody else had to come in and directly counterbalance. So it was a very similar looking time frame to how it was in the end of the Third Era there in Oblivion. So it was very, very similar in look. I wasn't seeing another planet; I was seeing Earth at that point. But that's basically the comparison right there that I was being shown to bring up. But we could see if we can go into galactic climactic portion here. Let's see here.
Yeah, if anyone's around.
It might be just Isaac this time around, but let's see. Yeah, he's raising his hand. He's doing this, so it's okay. You don't have to raise your hand. You're always here. Okay, let me see. Yeah, he has his edifice in the garage. I made a communications arc for him. It was meant for everybody, but he took it over. So so I had to make another one that was for the forest people, so that they could communicate. And now, like virtually every group wants a damn communications arc. So that's a plate. I have a skull in the center with two communication like stabs or like copper pipes in the center, and every group's wanting these things now. So because they're very handy. I use the Tower Buster formula to create an uncorruptible conduit. So Isaac, yes. Yes, I know you've been kind of foaming at the mouth here to want to say something and stuff. So okay. Not exactly that. Yeah, I know. I'm just messing with you. Okay, let's see. Okay. Ooh, you're in a rush for some reason. Let's see. Okay, through the crystal, Isaac, not my brain. Okay. He kept doing this. Come on. Like that. So I wonder what he was doing. Okay. He likes to screw with me sometimes. So. Yes, indeed. This is actually what he's been picking up on this whole time, though he has a funny way of describing it. His downloads come through at such an astronomical rate. Sometimes he is incomprehensible. This is only a fourth of a truth, mind you. The rest is joking. But what he was attempting to say is, yes, there was real history being depicted here from the dual planets, I should say, that I cannot give the solar system away. Whereas there are groups of cat people, groups of dogmen, groups of elves, humans, giants, and all in between. The exact same conflicts are and history are being depicted within the Elder Scrolls series, as I've said before. What he was picking up was a past life of himself there, where he literally had his head chopped off by a knight that had the reminiscent symbol of the red diamond. The significance of the red diamond is quite profound. It is a link dimensionally, not only to blood, and purity of blood, but that symbol, which eventually became almost like the basis for a cross. This is why Christians did the cross, is because it was actually the red diamond to start with. The cross became bastardized and eventually became even further bastardization with the guilt surrounding the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. But they wanted to flip it to more of a blood vampiric, or like the Holy Communion, the taking of the body of Christ and the blood of Christ sort of thing into it. They wanted to invert it into its vampiric sense, very much like the pentacle and the pentagram are in this, the inversions of each other, or the dualism. They wanted to split this. But the original symbol, it's more of like a cross and a diamond. It's more of a embossed version of it. Was originally a jewel, like your Amulet of Kings, that was dimensional in nature. You've heard me mention some of these before, where some things straddle both worlds. This had the basis to completely keep the blood purified of the vampiric contagions that were around even then. This was developed so that vampires could not form on a planet. This held the soul. This held the soul in place. This was why he sees the red jewel on Torrent Cowl's helmet. This keeps the soul in place. This keeps mental manipulation at bay. This is why, in some instances, also when Human Dear Moses were filming the vampire episode, he was tempted to take his hat off, because when he does this, it lights up the crown and brings undue attention during channel sessions. And also when he was in Vegas not too long ago, when he was tempted to take the hat off. This is why certain bad guys saw him out there in Red Rock Canyon. But this is what I was getting at. The original jewel was so empowered, and its copies were so empowered, it literally would repel the vampiric contagion. Eventually, again, morphing into the cross, and crosses and crucifixes being used against supposed demons, which this did not work, mind you, because the bastardization was created by said demonic forces and Orion forces and dark Darshinian magic and reptilian magics, you see. So this is why they would vampire hunters and such would always use the cross. It was the original piece that and its copies that would have repelled, not its bastardizations and inversions, you see. This is something that would have been a surprise to them why it did not work, because they were thinking from the way back. They were thinking of extreme ancient history on this other world, even. They more than likely either had past lives or genetic history on that other world. We're going back millions of years of history, not just hundreds of thousands. But we're going back pre-Orion Wars, even in pre-Neolithic Earth histories, you see. This is why this is so important. This is why Torankal is depicted with a red jewel. And this is why you see Reman and also Pelena Whitestreak with that as well. This is actually being presented in that way, also to help repel, even in its iconography, to repel some darker things from not only the video game constructs, but also trying to spark people's remembrance of the original designs of such. So I can go into questions if you like.
All right. Well, welcome back, Isaac, as always. And so the story of Reman, and especially the story of his God Geyser double form. Do you have anything that you'd like to add that maybe Chris in the download didn't sort of cohesively put out there?
Yes, the mind has a way of inverting some details, so I will clarify. He had mostly everything correct with the fusion of the life forms. This was actually depicting a real person that was on, we'll just call it Tamriel or Nirn. I cannot give the name of the real world in that respect. The depiction was this person wanted a certain ascendance of power over that of the darker lords, the Orions that were around in that world at the time, which would be reminiscent of your Second Empire, and the vampiric forces of the time, also hence the red diamond. In this, there was another being that he came into contact that was actually much older from that world's Preolithic period. In that respect, the two saw that they were stronger together. In this instance, though, the shadowy one was more or less a female form. It was not a male, and this was more of a fusion between the two. The being itself lived within the jewel. The man then could interchange both back and forth and shapeshift, activating the molecular, cellular, solid ability within the person. Back in giant histories, there were some that came out of the primordial soup that also had the ability to shift back and forth, but it is actually very rare that the molecular, cellular, solid ability allows you to go male-female. This was it became part of that genomic structure and entered into the genomic structure on Earth, certain memories in the genetic memory of being able to do this. This is where some of the transgender stuff comes from, to an extent, not from one person. Others tried this as well as the one giant form that could flip back and forth from billions of years ago on Earth. And then you have the weaponized version that exists today with your secret space program and the body transfer technology and the weaponizing on the mental warping of the transgender movements. But not to get you guys flagged in this program, but the fusion of the two life forms that you see in the events of Elder Scrolls is a certain fusion of that. They show them as both male, but this was more of a fusion of those particular energies. The entity in question that was female was from an earlier time frame in that planet's history, that there was a tribe of women that were actually taller in stature, like Amazons here on Earth, and they were of a slightly more giant form. They had the ability to access both the shadows and the lights from within. They had the ability to heal land, and they also had the ability to destroy on a whim. Others on that planet annihilated them, but there were several that remained in more of a, you would say, ghost-like form. And they even had the blackened armor that you saw as the ebony armor or ebony arm. It was very similar to this. When they would go into battle, you would not see their face. You would just see the blackened armor. Then one of these encountered this man that he here saw cutting his head off later on in his histories. It's someone that you do not know in your own histories other than this particular point. You yourself were there as well, but you played not necessarily a peasant role, but you played a warrior role that defended a peasant village. You were more of a guard there, essentially like a village like Riverwood or White Run and the like. It was very much of that nature that you became more of a warrior later on when there was a clash between two armies. Your side won, of course, and then formed again one of the other empires that came on later in history. Your line became part of that as well, descendants, since you had a wife and children there. I know I'm giving a lot of history, but these are the chains of events that took place on that planet that are being depicted in your Elder Scrolls history. So it is fairly accurate.
All right. Now, as for the idea that he was born out of the ground, which it's prevalent in Earth-like mythologies as well. Can you speak to like that idea and like this being born out of the ground sort of culture hero of that world? Is that just like a truly mythological thing, or does that have basis in like reality of beings like actually like elementals essentially coming out of the ground to like lead men?
This is actually 100% accurate in this way, where you've said it perfectly, Ryan, where these are the births of different elementals fusing and entering into that genetic form. Now, one could say that this could also be a genetic experiment too, and the Fomorian Orions back in the Tuathan Fomorian conflicts in Ireland did engage in those types of experiments, and weird mutations did come crawling out of the ground as far as familiars and dimensional portals and such. But in this specific type of analogy, this is actually more literal. Whereas you said he was more or less screwing the ground, this is essentially both false and correct. There would have been the woman there that had been fused into the ground, therefore giving birth to an elemental that had both the human DNA and the elemental DNA of the earth, you see. And in this instance, that is true. This is also reminiscent of Orion's using female birthers to channel some of their DNA into a human hybrid variation through abducted birthers. But the more literal sense is what you have just mentioned, whereas that child would then take on the DNA of the world itself and take on the different molecules of the different elements, going further back in time, millions and millions, even billions of years, where the different elements themselves then would coalesce and form different variations and variants of different elemental types, of which he has encountered on Galactic Interstellar Council, different naiadic and dryadic types. So this is entirely accurate. The way it is depicted, it is not just mythology. One would think it's fantastical and nonsensical because it does not make sense. It is incomprehensible to the human mind right now, just like the length of time it took for different giants to evolve billions and billions of years, and the way certain elementals evolved in the same way, or even a situation like this where things were sped up to the extent where you had Saint Alessia, the depiction of her where she was fused to the ground and the hill, but still able to give birth as a human would, therefore bringing in the hybridized genes of both earth and person.
All right, that makes sense, I guess. Let's see if I can find anything else that I have a direct question about. So I spoke a bit about a race that it's like a reptilian sort of snake person, but some are like, I guess, Naga like, and some are more like humanoid with just like sort of scale patches and stuff. And I've heard that there are like reptilian human hybrids that are like that. Is that accurate?
That is entirely accurate, Ryan. You see, there are reptilian human hybrids that either have the skin pigmentation of humans, which would be all the races of humans, not just white, like some people would think white and Nazi and reptilian, which that's true for that particular sect of Draconian. But in this instance, you have the flat-faced ones that are more human hybrid. Then you have more the elongated face, like Draconian, crocodilian, and raptor type forms. Then you have other reptilian forms that aren't Draco at all, that are more from earlier dinosaur forms that are hybridized forms. Some were kind back in the Paleolithic period, that you had hybridized creatures that walked side by side with giants. But then you have some lesser evolved ones that would eat humans, like you have raptors that are around now, like actual ones that look like chickens with plumage that also guard sleeping giants as well. They've enlisted their assistance in that, where they've controlled them with a collar or an implant or a helmet or something of the like. Then you have different reptilians that are also in armor, that are human Draco type hybrids that are in more of a Roman visage. These were around in the time of ancient Rome and are not as common now, but they do exist in the inner earth. And you have also different variations between. You have kind ones that look like chameleons. He encountered one by the name of Yargasa or Jaeger that was describing they lived in the mountains and were created as familiars in the times of Atlantis by expert geneticists such as Forbosi and other geneticists that lived at the time as familiars. This is some of the history he did not know. He thought it was just a scientist and more closer to the now. But to cap this particular comment off, yes, you are correct. All of the variations above that you are seeing in your Elder Scrolls mythology, including like the dragon hybrids, the dragon warriors hybrid, reptilian warriors, such as like almost a Roman look or an Oriental look, a hybrid between Untumban and reptilian also exists, just like there's hybrid machine type of Japanese looking warriors, as well as hybrid machine Viking looking ones as well, from the assimilation of that genome by not only the Black Goo, but the creation of AI on Atlantis from Orion influences across the void of time, 500,000 years to be exact, from the times of the Orion Wars. But also to state everything that you've said so far with those variations of races is true.
All right. So I guess that kind of does it for my questions. Is there anything you'd like to pass along, either message-wise or concepts that you think that would relate to this topic?
Yes, this is actually fascinating that this is coming up again, because eventually humanity will see the prevalence of those planets that we have spoken about that are exactly like Elder Scrolls. Their histories are tied very intricately with Earth, very, very prominently with Earth, even though the element of the Bifrost has been totally sealed off right now. Eventually, it will be opened again when there's no longer an Orion threat that could pursue them. They themselves might be finicky about that connection, because they still have the level of capabilities that you're seeing in Elder Scrolls. They're in a magical sword and sorcery, sword and sandal type of evolutionary state, but they have the intelligence of a hyper advanced technological society in some cases not so much. It depends on who you speak to and what group you speak to. Some are more like the Sijic order, while others are more or less like a group of bandits, very much the contrast in between, and all in between, good, bad, and ugly, very much exactly like Earth, with all the species of elves, cats, and all of this in between, werewolves, vampires, all of this. It is all there. And variations of even that virus and then the werewolf virus are all there. So that may take them some time to be able to reconnect to Earth, even if the gateway does open in due course. and I personally believe it will. You could say your fates are tied together, but it is more or less just your histories are tied together. There's always choice whether you interact or not. But humanity on Earth will have to become more evolved first and see these things as not necessarily myths and legends to be able to get past that fear hump, as it were, when it comes to these different stories, or even fear of the unknown and fear of all of these cryptids and all, like such as Sasquatch, forest people, werewolves, and vampires. Even though some things you should be leery of and afraid of to stay away from, but do not fear the Reaper as far as understanding the existence of these beings. This is where I would like to leave this information. So thank you once again.
Thank you, Isaac.
Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, I could see flashes of that other planet. He didn't connect me to it. Of course, I can't connect quantumly to it, or else I'd form a string or a gateway from here, because it would be like a micro portal opening up there, like a micro fissure or crack, or any of those variations in between vortexes or something like that. But I could see literally there was a broken like doorway, like an arch that had like a gazebo type of vortex like encasement on the other side. It looked like like what you'd see the way shrines for the Knights of the Nine in Oblivion.
Yeah.
It stood like out in a field and had some mountains around it, which looked like it was like a communication arc of some kind, where somebody would stand there and there would be a portal that they could communicate through or step through, like an arch in front of it. Like there were stairs that went down to an arch from this platform where somebody could stand and communicate or walk through the portal. And I believe that was the connection to Earth at one point I was being shown. Like on Antumbo, when they want to communicate, even in their vibration, they stand up in the hills where there's these two rocks that they communicate through. Like that's like this. This is how the portal was for the communications portal. But in between there were these stands, or these like staffs. And I found out the symbol of the staffs it became a symbol. The dual staffs became a symbol of communications and authority. So this is also intuitively why when I made my communication arc devices, I automatically wanted to put two copper pipes up going like this. You see the god Viracocha doing this, in histories you see multiple gods in history with the two staffs. And this meant authority, communications, even kingship. So that's where that originally came from, was like a portal arc or doorway like that. Even though this was an arch, it still had the two plugs into the ground where you have to ground it. You literally have to ground it to the earth or wherever to bring the stone portal or whatever gateway you're trying to communicate through. It's a form of grounding, like in electricity, like an electrical arc. It has to be grounded. It's the same premise. So, so like in order to communicate, you have to have like an antenna that's grounded somewhere. It's the same difference. So now that's what I'm being shown. And I thought it was funny. He said I was incomprehensible, but he's been joking around with me lately about that, because the levels of downloads I've been getting, especially from Torrencal, have come through very quickly. And
the reason why I asked him to clarify it was because when I was listening to it, I'm like, oh, I can kind of understand what he's saying, because you kept doubling back to the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. See, my brain does that. It will hit different points. It'll go back and double back and hit the points like that. So that's how my mind works, and that's why he was saying, "Oh, that's incomprehensible." I'll just say it like this. So,
yeah, I just needed it cleaned. I wanted it cleaned up so the point just jumped to for people.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I don't know if you have anything else to add before we end this episode.
Not much. People, just keep doing your work, your inner work, and hopefully, I will see you in the next one.
All right. Thank you, everybody. This has been another Disclosure in the Media with me and Ryan. And this has been another Elder Scrolls episode. So thank you, everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Bye-bye now.
Thank you. Bye.
Now, I want to point out something. I'm working on an edit at the moment from the time you're seeing this on the life of Reman Cyrodiil. This was an episode that Ryan and I did a couple months back. I haven't gotten around to editing it yet. Well, timing is everything. And there is an image that he was showing me that goes into this, and I may mention this. in the show. I don't really completely remember, but I'll retouch on this. It's an image of Sanguine, the Daedric god of debauchery. And it says, I'll read this. It says, "Do you know, Sanguine once served in the court of Emperor Reman Cyrodiil, where he would be known to throw bohemic parties and even go on to teach the emperor himself to orgasm without his hands. In one such episode, Leyawiin was closed for the purpose of hosting a week-long orgy compromising hundreds of the most prominent nobles in Cyrodiil. For more information, look up Funky Town." This was supposed to be humorous, but I'll break this down for you. For one, compromising of the nobles, this is what the Cabal and the satanic groups do so that they have something to blackmail them with. This happens to people. They get pictures of them, they film them, and then they have something to blackmail them with later if they don't do that group's bidding. The same goes like with the movie Eyes Wide Shut with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, where, he gets into that sexual circle, sex orgy place, and he takes off his mask, and people actually can identify him in public now. And even a friend of his that he thought was good comes up to him and says later on, "Hey, I remember you from being there. This is why they all wore masks there, so they couldn't be compromised." That's what that was essentially about. But Sanguine, they put him as like this playful character, like, oh, just let loose, let go, and they do that in both the game Oblivion and in Skyrim. In Oblivion, he wants you to go to Leyawiin, the town Leyawiin, and mess with the nobles a little bit. Use a staff on them that basically takes all their clothes off while they're at dinner. Like, there's these prissy nobles that would never do anything like that. He wanted you to just basically get them to loosen up. On the playful side of this is like how Isaac does. He gets people to lighten up, loosen up with jokes, gets them desensitized to words they might be offended with. That's different. What I'm getting at, I'll throw bohemic parties. That's Bohemian Grove in California, and there's also another version of it in another version like it in South Dakota, on the western or eastern side of South Dakota, and that's where I found it was connected to someone's property where there was an archdemon. I already did a recording on that. I won't go into that portion of it, but you get the gist of it. Bohemic parties is essentially like a hedonistic type of situation. Also, how you saw the gods in Thor: Love and Thunder, all that type of stuff. It's essentially very apropos towards this. What I'm getting at is this is actually very, very accurate, even as far as them being close to like world leaders, country leaders, senators, congressmen. This is what happened essentially with Jeffrey Epstein. He had his island. He had all these important people. They were all photographed there. He made sure that he posed with them. And now what? This compromised all their positions. Not that they didn't deserve to be compromised, because they were doing shit themselves. Even being there, even being amongst that. These are the Satanic Cabal as we know them. So this is a very accurate image that's on here. And this is a very accurate depiction of what is being said. It's basically an image of Sanguine and a half human face. Him taking that form and causing all sorts of havoc and mischief. They make it again be more playful. Like in Skyrim, when you encounter Sanguine, he's in a human form in a bar, and he wants you to drink what he gives you, and then you go on this like drunken quest where you see where you've basically kidnapped someone's goat and traded it to a giant. The goat image is essentially another image of the Satanic Cabal, so they added a goat type of thing in there. That, and implying that you had sex with a goat. And also where you basically try to buy a wedding ring from somebody, and you end up giving it to a big Hargraven harpy owl witch type of being, and you have to get it back and give it back to the person. and you that you did all these things that you don't remember. Again, in a compromised position, and that's in Skyrim, where you eventually meet Sanguine in his realm, and it's just a bunch of debaucherous orgy type of things that are going on there in his realm of Oblivion. So I find this interesting that now this is popping up, and I'm remembering this particular part. So yeah, I'll add this at the end, and I do believe Ryan put the image in the show. So it's one of the things he's talking about. If I didn't add all the rest of this in during the show, I do apologize, but this is essentially what needs to be gotten. Also, it needs to be emphasized on as well. So, and some of the cannibalistic stuff falls under this too, like in Skyrim, where you find this order of Namira, where this monk says somebody's been gnawing on the bones of the dead somewhere, or something's been happening. Weird noise has been happening in the crypt, and you find out some bones have been chewed on and stuff like that. And in the Undercroft of Markarth, and you find out some of the town's prominent people are cannibals. They capture people and eat them. And this happens in a lot of Bethesda games out there. I'm not dumping on Bethesda. They've made wonderful stuff. But they add the cannibal quest into pretty much every goddamn thing that they make. In some small degree, somewhere where you gain more power by eating someone. They're trying to say, you have the power if you eat somebody. Or if they're trying to, like in Skyrim, the female you come across going, oh, you've been this way since you were little, the manipulation from trying to warp your childhood memories and everything. That's part of this as well. If you want to check this out, play through Skyrim. You'll find at this monk at the door to their burial place in Markarth, their Undercroft area. Go there. You'll find that. You'll see what I mean. In Skyrim, also, you'll see this quest. You'll see Sanguine. I believe he is in Whiterun, inside of the main pub bar that's there. He's sitting at a table there in human form. You eventually find out it's him, and you get a prize from him at the end. But they're trying to make it playful, but these are actual serious things that are going on. So it is 11:51 a.m. Monday, July 11th, 2022. Thank you.